I'm here today with two of my amazingly awesome coworkers, Ali Sikorsky and Mario Ball. Ali is a software engineer at Learning A to Z, and Mario is one of the senior members of our QA team. Just to help you out, I'm the bald-headed gentleman with glasses and a goatee on the left. Ali is the young woman with long black hair and glasses in the middle photo, and Mario is the smiling, handsome chap with a nice head of hair on the right. The three of us work together at Learning A to Z in our Ann Arbor, Michigan office. Each of us will be sharing our stories today about why accessibility is so important to us and how we work together and what we've learned. As for my background, I started working in the software industry a little over 30 years ago, and I'm proud to say that I've spent most of my software career working on children's education or entertainment products. Like most of us, I've seen a lot of changes in the industry over the years, with new platforms, a growing and varied audience of users, and cultural shifting events that have changed the way we interact with information and each other. But for me, one of the most important, impactful, and significant shifts in our digital-centric world is happening with accessibility. And I've seen it firsthand in both my personal life and in my work at Learning A to Z. But first, a little bit about Learning A to Z. So who are we? Learning A to Z is a company of truly talented, highly experienced educators, designers, engineers, instructional specialists, editors, content creators, and so many more individuals dedicated to living our why each and every day. What is our why, you may ask? At least I hope you're asking that. Well, it's pretty simple. Our why is to inspire curiosity, ensure comprehension, instill the joy of learning for all elementary students. We are focused on providing research-based literacy software and resources to K-5 teachers and their students. Many of our employees are former teachers and education specialists, so we truly understand teachers and the challenges they face every day. These same challenges were made worse during the pandemic, but it provided Learning A to Z the opportunity to create new solutions for our users for remote learning with our distance learning and connected classroom projects. It's an example of our true empathy for teachers and their students, and it goes to the core of one of our strongest values. We meet our customers where they are. And when we say our customers, we mean all of our customers. So how did I come to Learning A to Z? My journey with Learning A to Z started in September of 2019 when I was hired to be the web design team manager. Prior to coming to Learning A to Z, I had been working as a freelance graphic designer and illustrator and had very little experience with issues around digital accessibility. Shortly after joining Learning A to Z, I was invited to attend accessibility team meetings. And in those meetings, I felt like I was getting a crash course on the subject. The team lived within the engineering department and was made up of a couple of web designers with front-end development experience, a software engineer, and a representative from our QA department. The team would have weekly status meetings to address accessibility issues that were discovered within our products that needed to be remediated. This is how I came to collaborate with Ali and Mario as part of that team. After being on the team for over a year, our company was going through a variety of changes under new leadership, and I was eventually assigned to be the leader of that team. Eventually, the web design team was moved out of engineering and was relocated to product development. This reorganization facilitated better cross-departmental communication, and I soon learned that there were other accessibility initiatives that were happening throughout Learning A to Z. In fact, I was really happy to learn that other people were focusing on accessibility as we were in engineering. So why is accessibility important to me? Before I continue with our team's work, I'd like to take a minute and explain why accessibility is important to me. Many of us who have worked on the accessibility team have our own special personal reasons for why accessibility is important to us. Ali and Mario will be sharing theirs a little later, but for me, it's all about my older sister, Cindy. Cindy is a 61-year-old woman with developmental disabilities. Seen here is a photo of my sister and I at, or excuse me, bad grammar, my sister and me at the Motor City Comic-Con I happen to be a big comic book nerd, as is my sister. Due to her issues with walking and balance, I use a wheelchair to get her around the Comic-Con. Quite frankly, it's a real treat for her and a total workout for me. Being born developmentally disabled, my sister struggled with cognitive learning issues and physical mobility issues her entire life. In fact, when she was born in 1960, doctors weren't optimistic that she would even be able to walk or attend a regular school. With a lot of hard work, patience, and persistence, my parents were able to get my sister to walk well enough to move around on her own, and she attended public school. As you can imagine, school was incredibly challenging for my sister, but she managed to graduate high school in 1979. Cindy now lives in a semi-independent apartment living environment with very little assistance, but I've had to make accommodations to make her living environment more accessible for her with things like shower handles, toilet seat handles, and providing her a walker that she needs to move around. Cindy also wears ankle braces to provide more stability to her when she stands and walks. Due to her challenges with mobility, Cindy spends a lot of time at home, and her computer and Kindle Fire have become her connection to her friends, family, and the world. It's almost as if Cindy's disabilities disappear when she's online. She shares the same freedom to email, chat, and surf the internet and connect with others that we all have. Cindy's life hasn't been easy, and she's faced so many challenges, but I'm so very proud that she's my sister. Her patience, strength, and faith inspire me and has shown me the power, freedom, and equity that digital accessibility can bring. So let's talk about the challenge of creating digitally accessible products and content. Maybe you're part of an organization that's about to start diving into accessibility, or perhaps you've just started. What does it feel like? Well, I wanted to share this image because I think it sums up a couple ways we could view digital accessibility, kind of a glass half empty, half full scenario. Here we have an individual silhouetted against a night sky filled with thousands of stars. The universe above this person is clearly vast and unlimited, and they might be thinking, holy crap, how are we going to get there? How are we going to move from where we're at and head out there? And which way should we be headed? It can feel overwhelming, and it's difficult to know where to start. But then again, this person could be thinking, holy crap, look at all that space. Look at the universe of possibilities. There must be so many amazing places to go and things to experience out there. The quote that I've included next to the image is from President John F. Kennedy when he was giving a speech about the pursuit of putting an American on the moon. It's a fairly well-known quote, and you've probably heard of it several times. I know I've heard it many times before in various movies and documentaries. President Kennedy stated, we will go to the moon, or we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. So when I Googled this quote for our presentation, I was a little surprised because I had only ever heard the first part of this quote, but never the second part. President Kennedy went on to say, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win, and the others too. This quote could just as easily be applied to achieving accessibility for your company as it was about traveling to the moon. In other words, to become more accessible with your products and services will serve to organize and measure the best of your energies and skills. And it is a challenge that we all should be willing to accept and refuse to postpone. And we intend to win, not only for ourselves, but for everyone who seeks to use our products and services. So let's talk a little bit about remediating accessibility issues. As I said earlier, my education in digital accessibility really started in 2019 when I arrived at Learning A to Z. In 2019, the then VP of Engineering, a man by the name of Kent Knipe, had an accessibility audit conducted of 2 of Learning A to Z's product sites. As expected, the audit identified a number of issues that needed remediation, so our accessibility team was formed. The top accessibility concerns issues we encountered are listed here. Color contrast, font sizes, descriptive text for images and infographics, tabbing order and screen navigation, proper alt text for screen readers. The report we received from the audit listed all of the issues, rated them from critical to low in terms of their impact to users, and provided recommendations for fixes. Now, it could seem overwhelming, but we chose to basically take as my mom would say, take the elephant one bite at a time. We worked to address the critical and high-level issues first because these products were already being used by teachers and students. Then we attacked the medium-level issues and so on until all of the issues from the audit were resolved. Again, this remediation was a collaborative effort between web design, software development, and QA. So from seeing all the results of the audit and remedying these issues, what did we learn? It all starts with design. Yep, that's right. It all starts with design. I've heard this same message echoed time and time again in a variety of accessibility resources I've read and workshops I've attended. I've come to appreciate and understand how true this is through my own experience. Planning and designing for accessibility in advance of development of a product reduces the amount of potential remediation that might be needed after a product is released. UX design, along with visual design and front-end development, should collaborate up front at the start of a project to ensure that an accessible design plan is put into place. So what is our guide for digital accessibility? At Learning A to Z, we've adopted WCAG 2.1 AA as our guideline and goal for accessibility. In the other XCon sessions you've attended, I'm sure WCAG has come up several times, but for those who aren't familiar with WCAG, it stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. The WCAG guidelines are an extensive and thorough set of internationally accepted standards for digital accessibility that can guide you to creating more accessible experiences. And as I mentioned before, a number of the issues we needed to remediate from our audit were related to color contrast and font sizes. And these were issues that could be addressed by our web designers. Didn't even require a software engineer. Low contrast on text is the #1 accessibility issue that shows up on most websites. In fact, in a 2019 study, WebAIM's programmatic analysis of the top 1 million homepages showed that low color contrast on text was the most common accessibility issue affecting a large number of pages, 85% to be exact. To help designers make the proper color and font choices, there are tools available to evaluate the accessibility of those choices. Here's an image of Deque Solutions Color Checker. Color checkers are an invaluable tool for designers. Designers can input a hex or RGB color value for a text color and a value for the background color to see if the choices the designer has made are accessible for most users, as well as indicating the WCAG standard, AA or AAA it meets. So what have I learned? What have I learned in this short amount of time working on accessibility team at Learning A to Z? Accessibility, again, really starts with design, and it's not enough to have the guidelines and tools to do the work. It requires a commitment from your UX designers and visual designers to truly empathize with users who have accessibility needs. I know some designers feel that making designs accessible restricts their ability to design and be wildly creative, but this really isn't true. Accessible design is better design because it accounts for more users, a better overall user experience, and challenges designers to be more creative and inventive with their solutions. When you have a design team creating for digital accessibility, it is important to check your work. We're only human after all, and even with proper training, tools, and guidelines, we can still make mistakes. It's a good idea to share your work with other designers on your team and have them test for accessibility. Set up regular design reviews to include accessibility checks. If design reviews aren't always possible, conduct accessibility spot checks because some testing is better than none at all. Accessibility not only begins with design, it should also begin at the start of the planning phase of your project. Include accessibility in your project charters and requirements. You don't want to be addressing accessibility concerns after a product has been engineered and sent into the wild. Another lesson we've learned is that remediation is expensive and fixes rarely yields the best results compared to doing it the right way from the beginning. Lastly, you shouldn't try to go it alone. You can try to do the research yourself and pore over the WCAG guidelines to interpret them, but without the accessibility expertise, you run the risk of wasting a lot of time, energy, and money to produce less than successful results. It's important to seek help from accessibility experts, hire employees who have extensive accessibility experience, and train your teams. And now let's hear from Ali, who will share her perspective of her accessibility journey as a software engineer at Learning A to Z. Ali?
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. I'm Ali. I'm a software engineer at Learning A to Z, LAZ for short. So last year, I told my manager, Rick, that I was interested in working on accessibility bugs and features. He said, "That sounds great. Did you know our software engineers are rotated regularly onto the accessibility team?" And before I knew it, I was on the team. For a month, the previous engineer on the team, Marco, helped me get started using resources and tools like NVDA and Axe, and finished up his remaining work. Then I started the work where he left off on our list of accessibility areas for improvement. Next slide. On this slide is a picture of myself and my sister, who is a large part of why I decided to work at LAZ and on the accessibility team. My sister works in special education, and her school uses LAZ to help kids with their reading. She's told me about how her students each have unique learning styles, which often stray from the traditional approach. This includes the way that they use technology. Her students and their special needs are at the forefront of my mind when I develop. I really want to help create a product that leaves no one behind. Next slide. The LAZ engineering team has been working to be more accessibility focused, which we really amped up in 2019 with our accessibility audit. The audit revealed gaps in our knowledge about accessibility, so we decided to educate our entire engineering department about accessibility best practices with tech talks. We covered topics including how to use NVDA while testing and how to use tools baked into HTML to write an accessible web page. We also created a dedicated accessibility team for engineers to develop their skills with accessibility. For about 3 months, engineers would work on the bugs and features related to accessibility. After my 3 months on the team fixing code and trying to build accessibility on top of a feature, I became an advocate for baking accessibility into the code at the beginning of projects. No more time would be wasted completely rewriting features to add in accessible behavior. Our new projects now have engineers who've been on the accessibility team, and we have many voices advocating for its importance. We communicate a lot more now between UX and visual design to improve accessibility too. There are people in all steps of the development cycle giving input on how we can make improvements, like using a button instead of a link here, or this color palette needs more color contrast. Instead of just one person shouting about the importance of accessibility, there's a chorus of people. Next slide. I've learned a lot while I was on the accessibility team, like how important it is to prioritize accessibility at the first stage of development. It can't be something that's pushed off until time is available. There were many instances where we would have 2 cards for a feature, one for the feature itself and one that said, add accessibility to this feature. The main feature card would then get moved to QA, and the accessibility portion would be backlogged and forgotten. It's important to not decouple accessibility from a task. Instead, that main feature card should have a subtask that focuses on accessibility. A feature shouldn't be considered complete until it's been made accessible. Another point is to take time to learn and become familiar with accessibility tools like NVDA. I try to use screen readers with my monitor off or my eyes closed to get rid of the subconscious visual cues. Taking on different perspectives of a user opens many new things to test. I've also learned that accessibility issues can leak throughout the code base. An example of this at LAS is our tabs and tab panels. I was working on a bug about the way a user could switch from one tab to the next using only their keyboard. And after fixing that implementation, I did a search for tab panels to see if there were other areas that needed to be fixed. And there were many. Most had completely different behaviors and needed their own specific fix. There are many different places accessibility issues could be hiding, and fixing it for one area very likely won't fix it for others. A solution for this is to be consistent with behavior and testing. For behavior, this can come with a generalized component that has the desired accessible behavior. So for our tab panel issue before, instead of having many different tab panels that each act their own way, create a component called tab panel and define the behavior there. I've found that making your site more accessible can often lead to a cleaner code base too. For testing, I like to have a checklist that I can reference easily. I make sure that everything is tabbable, so a non-mouse user can have the same experience a mouse user would. And I also verify that the screen reader reads what's expected, including labels and descriptions. So that's all for engineering. Now on to Mario, who is going to talk about QA at LAS.
Thanks, Allie. I am excited. Thanks for everyone who's tuning in today and in the future. My name is Mario, and I'm a senior QA engineer. And I'll tell you how I came to the accessibility team. First, I started out with an internship at Kurzweil Educational Systems. I finished school in Massachusetts and went to Kurzweil Educational System, started thinking that I could do a great internship and change the product to make it even better than what it was. And as I was doing my internship, I became a QA engineer. As I was a QA engineer, I met a big role model to me named Kent Knipe. And the reason why he was such a big role model to me was due to him always thinking about how awesome accessibility was and how everyone should be able to use the product and how the product should be used for each individual person. As I was using the product Kurzweil 3000, he watched me and he said, "Hey, I would really like you to come to the LAS team because we're going to do an audit on the LAS site to make it more accessible for students." So I decided to come to the LAS QA team to help to make it more accessible. Next slide. Why is accessibility important to me? The reason why it's so important to me is because I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was a young kid. This was hard for me to accept or to understand. As I was diagnosed with dyslexia, I would always fail out of different classes and stuff like that. I would always have to go to different tutors. And as time went by, I would always have hard times reading different things. As I was going through school, I finally finished high school and I found a wonderful college in Putney, Vermont called Landmark College, where a bunch of other students had the same disability that I did. And with the dyslexic, I found the product called Kurzweil 3000 that was able for me to keep up with reading. It was a 24-hour tutor that I would be able to take any type of document, scan it on, and it would be able to read to me whenever I wanted to, making my confidence much stronger and making sure that everything was accessible to me And this was a big reason why I went to Kurzweil, is to make sure that I would be able to stand up for those people that had the same kind of problems that I had. As I was going through this, I made the software better. I helped with the different tools to make it much, much stronger for those students that were out there. And that was the reason why I joined the Kurzweil and the LAS team, to make it so much stronger. Next slide. What does QA do to test? There's many different things, like the 3 people already talked about them. When we start testing a site, we go through and we make sure first that everything is tabable, that someone could tab through them. One thing that is important to me and to our team is that a student with any kind of disability wouldn't have to call an aide. So we go through, we make sure that it's tabable, it's readable, and the order in which it reads is good. And then we go through and make sure that the different parts of the contrast, as John talked about, is good. That, like, for instance, the B and the D is shown there, and the reading works perfectly. The order in which it's read, up and down, side to side, and all of that through the web page. And this is really important for the kids to see the text and to see it be read the correct way. Moving on to the next slide. Now on the right-hand side, there's a picture of a antenna that's shooting up in the sky, and the purple sky that's scanning away. There's different types of software that we use that I've learned about. We use like the Axe tool to get each different page. We use the Wave tool. We use different tools to make sure that the color contrast is right and stuff like that. But as I'm using these different tools, the most important for me is to try to work the same way as a student or test the same way as a student. One of the ways I've learned to do this is I turn on the iPad, I turn on accessibility, and I start swiping with it and letting it go across the same way. But I learned that each one of the kids do it really fast and then hit it very strongly and hit all over on the screen. And that wasn't the way I was testing, but I was learning more and more to do it that way, to swipe and to hit all over the screen through it the same way as the kids do it. Then I learned other ways the kids would be on a book. They would not just highlight a few little things, they would highlight the whole page and then try to go back and read through it. And we always made sure that those different parts of it were always working and never crashing the app or anything like that. So these are always been very important things to me while testing, is to try to act more like the user and to even watch the different things of how a user does it to be more effective. Turn back over to you, John.
Great, Mario, thanks. Really appreciate it. So now, after the remediation and working together, and the company opening up to more and more accessibility initiatives, the question is, where are we now? So our journey has begun, clearly, but we have so much more to do. It's comforting to know that we're not at the start, but it's important to know that the journey is ongoing. In the past year alone, we've made a lot of forward movement in our accessibility journey, and happily, many of these initiatives have started with encouragement and support from the top of our organization with our senior leadership. I can't stress this enough, that it really needs to come from the top. It's great that companies have small grassroots initiatives in different departments, but it's really important for accessibility to be made a priority for the whole organization. I'm happy to say that we've recently finalized our Learning A to Z accessibility policy statement, and we'll be adding it to our company website in the coming weeks. It's something that we've been working on a while with guidance from Deque Solutions and voices internally in our organization. but I'm really happy that we're going to be finally sharing that with the public. We now have a designated cross-departmental accessibility project team tasked with monitoring and addressing accessibility initiatives for the entire company and working with a dedicated budget. This team consists of a product manager, project manager, and members of design, content development, production and design, engineering, and QA. We have conducted training for various members of our team in both accessibility fundamentals and customer service, and have budgeted for additional cross-departmental training in 2022. And speaking of customer service, we've established a customer service email address, accessibility@learningatozee.com, to accept and channel accessibility questions and concerns. When accessibility issues come up in the products, whether we discover them or they are brought to us through customer service, these, as we might call them, bugs, accessibility bugs, are brought to our weekly triage meeting, where they are assigned a priority and assigned to either a software engineer and or a visual designer to fix. We have cross-departmental collaboration to improve our communication regarding accessibility issues. Our team members are thinking about accessibility, asking questions, looking for guidance, and making accessibility a bigger part of our company culture. Currently, we are developing a couple new products that will be coming out this year, and I've really loved having designers and engineers come to me asking accessibility questions. It's really become ingrained as part of our culture. I can honestly say that for those of us who have been advocates for accessibility, like Ali, Mario, and myself, we couldn't be happier to see this grow at Learning A to Z. And lastly, we've worked to improve our design processes and resources to make our products more accessible. And here are just a few examples of what we're doing. First, we have a collaboration between UX and visual design that has yielded a new accessible design system for our new and future products. This design system is based on material component design, and we've tailored it with an accessible color palette, font choices and sizes, and we've established rules and guidelines for governance. Our component library has been created in Figma, where our designers can create mockups using the predefined components to be used by our front-end developers to build the actual pages in our products. We are also developing guidelines for the usage of images, infographics, illustrations, and animation. For our newest PDF resources, we've focused on a number of accessibility enhancements. We're working to ensure that meaningful content is marked with the appropriate semantic tags. We're improving our text hierarchy, tagging to ensure screen readers will only read the text we intended it to, and that the structure tree created by the document tags reflects the document's proper reading order. We're employing the use of screen readers on both web and mobile devices to test our PDFs to make sure they're reading back correctly. We're employing the use of color contrast checkers to check for font colors and sizes, and creating guidelines for individuals with color blindness. For individuals with low vision or no vision, we're working to improve our descriptive text for images to make them as brief, concise, and useful to the user as possible. Ultimately, we would like to reduce our use of PDFs whenever possible and use HTML pages to present the content that screen readers can read and that can be navigated with a proper tagging order. These HTML pages will also work with refreshable Braille displays. We've also done work to improve our videos. To improve the level of accessibility in the videos we've been creating for our newest products, we have created a set of guidelines for our video resources, and we've provided these guidelines to our internal multimedia team and to outside vendors. These guidelines include the use of accessible fonts and font types, colors for proper contrast, and criteria for image selection. Our videos feature both closed captioning and audio transcripts, for individuals with hearing impairments. We have also been working to follow proper guidelines for motion graphics, animation, and video effects to address the concerns of individuals who struggle with seizures and other visual or cognitive impairments. So in summary, just like dieting, sorry to say this, folks, but just like dieting, there is no magic pill. Accessibility requires planning, work, and a continual commitment from your organization to keep on top of it. The image to the right here on this slide is of a NASA mission control room, and it illustrates this concept well. It takes a team to plan a space mission and monitor it. Once we launch something into space, we don't simply go to lunch and wish the mission crew good luck. It takes continuous vigilance and monitoring to ensure that the mission is successful. That is to say, there is no set it and forget it solution. Companies and organizations need to accept and embrace that accessibility needs to be an ongoing part of your process, products, and company culture. Again, I strongly encourage you to make accessibility a priority in your development plan. Invest the time and energy upfront to create an accessible design system that your UX team and visual designers can use to create their designs and that front-end developers can follow. This will not only bring accessibility to your products, but will ensure a better, more consistent user experience. And ask yourself these questions when you're looking at the work, when you're looking at the organization. Is this accessible? What are we doing about accessibility for this project? Have we budgeted for accessibility? These are questions that everybody on the team should be asking when working on a project. And if you have firsthand experience with accessibility, share your stories with your friends and coworkers. I strongly encourage this. I know these can be uncomfortable conversations, but you may be surprised to find someone you know has firsthand experience with accessibility as well, either for themselves or with a friend or a family member. I know in talking with my coworkers about accessibility in our organization, people have opened up to me about their personal stories. Again, do not try going it alone. Seek reputable expert guidance. As I stated earlier, without some accessibility expertise to guide and advise you, you will risk wasting time, money, and effort to produce less than successful results. And after all of this, if you still need a motivation towards digital accessibility, I hate to say it, but simply put, it's good for business. More and more clients and customers are making accessibility a priority for their business decisions because their customers are demanding it. We're seeing this more and more in the EdTech industry because school districts, states, and even countries are trying to better serve their teachers and students. And I mean every teacher and every student. Accessibility is also good for business because having to go back and fix accessibility issues in your products can be expensive and cost many times more than if your team had taken the time and addressed those decisions in the early stages of design. Lastly, ensuring that you're working towards an accessibility standard for your products will also help mitigate the risk of legal action against your organization. I mention this because even though it shouldn't be the first consideration when thinking about accessibility, it seems to be the one that motivates organizations to make accessibility a priority. So, well, that's our presentation. And on behalf of Ali, Mario, and myself, we really appreciate you taking the time to hear our stories and hope that if you leave with anything from this session, we hope that you know that you're not alone. There are a lot of us on this journey, and you can successfully move forward with making your products and services accessible to your customers, clients, and users. And believe me, we really understand the challenge that many people face, that a lot of organizations face. We've gone through it too. We have a great deal of empathy for people who are on this same journey with us. We love sharing our ideas. We love hearing other people's ideas. This is why AxCon is such a great event because it helps strengthen that community and allows us to share these stories and to share information. And speaking of XCon, I would like to thank Deque Solutions for inviting us to present this year. And I especially want to thank, special call out to Allison Matthews, Glenda Sims, and Josh Patrick of Deque for being such great partners on our journey. They've just been wonderful to work with. They've given us really good advice and have directed us in finding information and learning more, and just really proud to be a part of this conference and to have been invited. The team at Deque has been terrific to work with and has just provided us with valuable insights and help. So thank you very much. Thank you, Deque, and thank you for all of those who have attended the session and or will check out our session in the future. And Megan, we're up for questions.
Great. Well, thank you. First and foremost, I just have to say the chat has been a buzz with how clearly your passion for accessibility shows. So thank you for sharing that with us. First question that was most upvoted. When you got your audit results, how did you decide what to prioritize first in your remediation efforts?
Yeah, so the service that we used at the time, they actually provide that as a way of a report. And since then, we've had a separate audit done by Deque Solutions, and Deque has companies that do this kind of work generally provide very comprehensive feedback. So they'll list out the priority of the issues. Critical is basically a blocker, right? It's a blocker for the user, and then it goes down from there. Deque, when they presented their results, they actually have a hub that I call it a hub, but it's a site that you can go to that lists out the problems or the challenges or issues that you've run into. It rates them, and they provide information about fixes as well. So that information is generally given to us when we've done audits.
Great. As a next question, you tapped into this a bit, but would love for you to expand. What recommendations do you have for organizations that are struggling to get that buy-in from their leadership?
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's a couple of things, and Mario and Ali, I think, know this as well. And Mario and I have talked about this at length. You know, when we were under engineering, I don't know a better way to put it, Mario, so you can maybe find a better word, but we would be kind of pests about accessibility. So we would be in meetings and asking questions, and you know, kind of it was very grassroots in that respect. But then we were very fortunate to have new senior leadership come in that just made it more of a priority. One of the things that moved the needle, I think, for us as an organization is that clients, our customers, were asking for it. They were saying, look, in order for us to consider you, you have to have a certain level of compliance. And so those business decisions help move the needle. And that makes me really happy. I mean, I'm an optimist. I want to do things because it's the right thing to do, right? I believe in meeting the needs of everybody, especially a company like ours that does literacy software for teachers and students. But it's always the business case that seems to move the needle, and that's fine. That's great as long as the needle gets moved. I think it's showing some of the example, or like finding data on remediation, because you need to make those business cases. What does it cost if a customer says, you need to fix this, or we're not going to use your product, so you need to bring up the cost of remediation. I mean, I'm trying to remember the statistic, but remediation can cost you 10 times or 100 times more in dollars than taking the time and doing it right the first time. So remediation helps move those business decisions. Litigation seems to be the biggest one. You hear it a lot in conversation, in articles and things about accessibility. it's becoming more and more of an issue. We here in the Ann Arbor area had a case a couple of years ago, I believe it was against Domino's, had been sued because a customer could not access a coupon code in a particular browser. So litigation is a real concern, and the number of cases are going up every year. So yeah, satisfying client requirements, mitigating litigation, those are and avoiding the cost of remediation. Those become the things that tend to move a business, to those decisions.
John, the other thing I can add to that is it just in the design right at the beginning of the new project, if you just add that in there, right there at that point of, let's make this new piece even more accessible. And we just add that right into the design and the piece with it. You're going to move that needle just a little bit at that point to make your site even more accessible at that point. And a little bit of people get that, oh, that's awesome. That works this way. And it just keeps on spreading with other engineers and stuff like that. And it's just awesome to see it just go through the whole work environment that way is what I've seen it here. Is we had 3 engineers that just kept on going through, and I've seen it now that our stuff even gets better and better in other projects because they all understand how important accessibility is in the coding and stuff like that now, that it's just awesome to see some of that stuff that's coming out with the newer stuff with those people, and they're teaching other people. So it just spreads that way.
Yeah, it does. It really does spread. And then, more and more people start bringing it up. And so I guess there is the grassroots portion of it, and then there's also the top-down portion of it. But I think if you sort of pay attention to what's happening culturally, accessibility is more and more forefront in our conversations. Amazon, Google, Facebook, they all have campaigns that they've released on television that put an emphasis on accessibility. We're going to see probably a Best Oscar nod this year to a movie called Coda about people with who are deaf, of deaf family. At the Super Bowl this year, some of the honorary team captains were football players from a school for the deaf. So if it hasn't come to your organization yet, it's going to. So I'm sorry, Megan, that was a lot. That was a lot to unpack there.
No, it's great expertise to share and a great philosophy to share with the group here. We probably have time for one short last question, which is in regards to training. So for your internal training priorities, did you repurpose training materials? How did you execute training internally?
Yeah, so we sought out training through Deque because we have been partnering with them for the past year and a half. We've hired them to help us on a number of different initiatives, and they have training, and really good training. I was one of the individuals who took it, and one of the things that we try to do is it's not possible, and it can be even cost prohibitive to have everybody in your organization trained, especially if you're really large, like Learning A to Z. So we try to get a handful of members from different departments to do the training, and then we share that training with the rest of the organization. We've had, since I've been here, I want to say we've had 3 or 4 lunch and learns where we do presentations on accessibility and spread that information to the organization. Deque offers Deque University, so when you sign up for different things, you have access to Deque University, and that's a wealth of information for training.
Great.
So anyways, I'm sorry, I heard some noise, but anyways, so yeah, it's about spreading the word and then encouraging people to come to conferences like these, because I've learned quite a bit. In fact, I answered a couple of questions from our current project teams about animation and video effects, and the information that I was able to share with them, I had learned from Deque or XCon from last year. So anyways.
Thank you so much. That puts us right at time, but is a great word to the wise in terms of organizations considering their training efforts. So thank you so much, Learning A to Z team. It was great to hear about your journey.
Thank you. And we've posted, I don't know if they can see the slide with our lovely photos and email addresses. But if at any point people have more questions or want to pick our brains, we will share as much information as we can share about our journey. And obviously, we want to help others and hopefully at least give comfort to others who are doing this as well. So please feel free
Those
to
will
reach out to
be
us.
available in the slides. So thank you,
Okay.
everyone, and thank you, Learning A to Z team.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.